Hello everybody, my name is Luna and welcome back to the channel. We are back from the dead. At least to an extent. I have a new job doing college and stuff like that, so I haven't really had much time to make the videos as well as, having to even find anything to make content on, because the game's been pretty stale lately, except for, like, Valorant and that, but I honestly don't even know if my computer's strong enough to screen record that after the first time. I tried it a second time and it was not liking it, so I may just need to get a new computer to be able to do it, or even just maybe a capture card can help out with it. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about today, and even if I did want to do that, I probably don't have the money for it right now anyway, because college is a bitch. But what we wanted to talk about today were the new classes in our wonderful Buried Warrens game. I know that I am late to the party to an extent. I mean, the event's almost over, but I wanted to talk about them nonetheless because I have a few interesting things to say about them. At least I find them interesting. So if you do too, hopefully I can be at least of some interest here. So your first of the two classes, we're not going to go over you first. Come on, go away. We don't care about you, at least yet. We care about the Child Spirit. So the Child Spirit here, this one's actually my favorite of the two, because it does, man, I realize how bad that sounds, but anyway, the reason why I like this one is because of mainly its passive. The fact that it gains more power based on its shield, which is that rise and fall ability, is a very nice bonus. And because of its typing with both Dex and Intelligence, you can build this class similar to your halflings, and you will see some pretty decent success because of high crits, as well as the extra power from just gaining more shield. If you have the contract part Twisted Faith, it converts all healing into basically shield healing, so you can pretty much just gain tons and tons and tons of shield off of using what, in my opinion, is one of the biggest staple abilities in the game still, and that's Angel Light. The fact that it increases healing effectiveness, and it can cure ailments at level 3, which isn't that hard to get it to, makes it a pretty invaluable skill. I mean, whether you use that or use a different thing to cure ailments, or you just use things making you immune to them, doesn't matter either way. I think you should almost always have something to get rid of ailments, because Petrify is the bane of my damn existence, so I always bring it. And then you obviously have your high enemies that like to sit there and weaken and give you fragile and crap like that, which that obviously helps out with it, or if you get slowed or things like that. The only thing it doesn't help with is like paralysis, in which case you could either use fleet-footed or you can just use cooldown reducers if it's really a big deal. I don't normally actively try and counter paralysis, because usually I can survive the 25 turn cooldown, because between that, restrooms, what's it called, hasten rooms, the stupid green room, stuff like that, there's more than enough CDR to really be able to survive those kinds of things. But if you're still struggling with it, obviously that's a way to counter that. Next thing being the shield boost that she gets. It's basically HP boost, but for shields. It doubles the shield percentage numbers, as well as making it to where you don't have to be compliant with the limit break cap. You can just have as much shield as you want, just like if you had HP boost. And then lastly, probably one of the best parts of her kit in combination is the shield disconnect, which basically, as you can see on screen, they ignore damage greater than your shield amount whenever your shield takes damage, so your opponent can't just one-shot your shield. Or, I mean, I guess they could, but they'd have to do the exact same amount of damage as your shield. Otherwise, you just ignore the damage, which makes it pretty nice, because unlike HP boost, HP doesn't have anything like this. Yes, they have the reduced damage if you're overhealed, but that relies on you having another ability. This thing is quite literally just, if it's higher than your shield, you just ignore it, which is extremely useful. And unlike most classes, this one gives the legendary item Aegis, which here, let me go over to that one real quick. Just so I can give some actual... I mean, I know what it does, but I want you guys to be able to see what it does as well, just to make it a bit easier in case you guys are visual like me. So it's this one. the one that gives you Shield Master, where instead of increasing HP, you increase your shield. It gives you that extra 20% shield bonus, which obviously is going to be doubled with your shield boost, so you're going to go up to 40%. Then you're gaining a basic shield bonus too, because keep in mind those two things change. Those are just minimums. They obviously give you Dreadnought, which in my opinion is still, with its cooldown +1, that can restrict it. If you can max this thing, it really helps, but if you have even something like Finesse, which lowers a cooldown that has 2 or under, which means 0, 1, or 2 cooldown abilities, you technically gain cooldown -1. So say you're in a blue room, which gives you cooldown +1, and you have Finesse, your cooldown 0 abilities are still going to be 0, or if you're slowed by 1, basically you can subtract 1 from any ability at all times that it's a basic move, which to me is very valuable. The hardest ones to reduce are the 3 and 4s, like Angel Light, which is why I kick myself in the damn foot every day for accidentally getting rid of my Godspeed ability, because that one, that thing reduces cooldowns by 1 on all abilities every turn, which is one of the best abilities I've ever had, and I really feel stupid for accidentally getting rid of it. But nonetheless, we're talking about Dreadnought here. This thing can really make it or break it. If you use the Tempest Ninjutsu, obviously you don't need to care about cooldowns, because it'll ignore it anyway. So you only have to get this thing to +1, and at that point you don't even need Angel Light as a staple unless your class benefits from it, or if you just want the extra healing effectiveness. Or if you just want the boost in healing, like say you use Vampire, and you only put Vampire but not No Faith, and you just use it like, I don't know, at 20%, or you use that 30% card, both of which aren't a bad heal as a passive heal. And it doesn't cost you much in terms of lab parts, just to slap one on there instead of slapping both Vampire and No Faith on there. So I mean, it basically will give you a decent amount of healing as well, which is why another reason why I say Angel Light is still one of the best abilities in the game, because the fact that it can pretty much give you 3 very core things in it, all in one, and even if you have, say, No Faith, which basically cancels out its healing, it's still a very effective ability, because you're gaining an additional 100% healing effectiveness on top of still curing a status ailment. Yes, I know you can look at level, it has a 4-turn cooldown, but I mean, come on, under most conditions, who isn't using something to reduce those? And even if it is, even if you do have to sustain a 4-turn cooldown, you're gaining the healing for 5 turns, which means by the time you use it a second time, you're going to be at 200% for at least 1 extra turn, unless you've been slowed or something like that. And I mean, if you used haste or any of those things, you can reduce it. You can use other cooldown reducers. Like, there's plenty of ways to get that cooldown down if you're really worried about it. And if you end up maxing it, which also isn't too hard to do, it's a little bit harder. I don't normally look at the maxed out versions, which means +8 on abilities, unless they're like the basic attacks like Holy Bolt, attack, ranged attack, energy strike, things like that, because those are the most common abilities to find. If they aren't in that category, I normally don't look past their +3, and if they're an extremely rare ability, I don't normally look past their base effects, because at that point, it's almost, even unless you have really high luck increasers, and even then, it's still kind of hard to roll these things, I don't really look at it all too much. Sorry, make sure we weren't paused there for a second, because I noticed my phone locked itself. But as I was saying, what was I saying? Oh yeah. Nope, I lost it. There it is again. So basically, when it came to the 0 cooldowns, those things, if you can get those things plussed, it really does help. Like, I would say that my favorite out of the 4 base ones is probably Holy Bolt, just because it can go straight through armor at level 8. Granted, again, Strength has something better than that, which if you are a Strength class and you have access to it, I still would say to use it. I am going to make another video later today on that as well, going over legendaries and a lot of the kits they have. I don't have every legendary, but I have the majority of them, which will bring to another topic that I do want to discuss that one of our viewers actually brought up to me, which I think is a very cool feature that I didn't know about, and if you knew about it, good on you. It's just something that he explained to me that I didn't actually have any idea about, and that I'd actually like to see if we can get some numbers together, since I haven't been able to find them. And then for the next guy, sorry I paused so I switched there now so that I was hearing. Sorry about that random cut. I had to go deal with some dog that thought wanted to bust the door down. Anyway, now we're talking about this wonderful dude, the pirate. I've only used the dude once or twice. I tried Emblem those few times. I wasn't a big fan of him. He does have some decent basic abilities, but none of them are so wowing that it really helps. To me, he feels like a downgraded druid, and I did try out the druid again recently to give her another shot, and I would say that she's definitely better than I gave her credit for in the past, but I don't still think she's much better, just because there's other classes that can do what she does but better. And then you come down to this dude, and to me, he's probably the worst of the bunch. So let's start out with his passive. He gains Pursuit for 5 turns on dealing debuffs. Now, on the surface, this isn't bad, because Pursuit is always a decent ability. It's basically giving you a free hit. Pretty good stuff, even if it's not a huge hit. Free damage is free damage, especially one that can't trigger reflect and stuff like that. At least as far as I've been able to tell, it can't be hit by reflect. It might, but I'm almost certain it doesn't, because I've slammed into reflect numerous times with it, and I've never really noticed myself taking damage. Same thing goes with Tsunami. When you slam them for a heavy strike based on your level or whatever it is, whenever you use a cooldown of 5 or higher. But anyway, we're talking about him. For this, this ability to me is not really great. Yes, the fact that unlike the druid, he's able to gain it for a set amount of turns, instead of it just being however many elements you inflict on him is how much you gain, and it doesn't even tell you how much, or really any of that, so you're kind of just shooting in the dark. It really, to me, it's the reason why this falls behind is because, once again, it relies on you inflicting debuffs. And I know that a lot of people say that debuffs are better than buffs. I have disagreed with that since the launch of the game. And the reason being, debuffs usually have an accuracy rating, usually below 1,000. And if you don't know, 1,000 means you are guaranteed to hit this. You will not miss. If you miss, you're probably in either an infrasion room, or not infrasion, why am I spelling a blank? Vestive room, or whatever those are called. The stupid air gas room. Vast. There we go. Sorry, my mind is being stupid. Anyway, those rooms you may miss, but even then, your accuracy rating is still so high that the chance of you missing, even without an accuracy boost, is practically none. To the point where you may as well just say, whenever I use this ability, I'm going to hit it. The other reason why I prefer buffs over debuffs is because I don't have to rely on my opponent to be able to use it. Say your opponent has barriers, like you're fighting the Vampire Lord or whatever. The Vampire Lord has a decent amount of resistance as it is. Then you include the barriers that you have to go through. These barriers will also deflect status effects, which means even if you have like effective or other things to inflict said status effects, it still makes it insanely difficult to be able to inflict them when they have those kinds of statuses. Yes, if they're a class that doesn't, like you're playing against, I don't know, that stupid meat cleaver dude. I can't remember what his name is. Even though he's in almost every event dungeon, he's basically just that stupid giant. I think it's like Undead Chef or something like that. Yeah, he's probably not going to resist, because he has almost no resistances, so as long as you can basically hit him with it, he's going to be affected by it. But a lot of other classes do have these things. So unless it's something like add fragile and it's on my weapon, or it's like the storm blade, which every time you hit someone increases their damage gain or something like that, I don't usually take them because they just really don't help. The chances of you really being able to inflict it is not high. And the only time I ever really take a debuff is if it's basically a passive on the ability. Such as, 1 second, let me pull up the ability here just so we can see it. I think it was over here. Oh, there it is, Torment. The Torment hit right here. How it uses Pi and you hit them for 100% of your Pi, plus has 115 accuracy, which is a really, really nice accuracy stat. The fact that you're adding a solid amount of pollution for 5 turns on a 1 cooldown ability is great. And then I think if we actually do this, we can, I guess not. I think as you level it up, it actually either reduces its cooldown. I think the level 8 one reduces cooldown by 1, making it a cooldown 0. And then I think its level 3 version just adds, like, I think blind or weaken or something like that. I can't remember fully. I don't really use the move all that often because pollution, the only time pollution's really in handy is if you're planning on adding more debuffs to the opponent. And again, as I said, I don't really use that, especially enough to warrant dedicating 2 whole slots to it. I would rather stun my opponent or slow my opponent, which I do know slow is a status effect, but more importantly, stun, more so than use like weaken or fragile. Now, if you're using damage reduce, using weaken in tandem of damage reduce is something I will do, because those are usually things that can really help you out. Because by stacking those two, it gets kind of ridiculous how little damage you take. Like, say you have robustness and enhanced defense 2, and then you slap on some add weaken, or you can get like foul odor, or the I can't remember what the name of the other ability is, but in other case, foul odor is stronger anyway. But say you can get that one, which adds 75% weaken for 2 turns with a cooldown of 4, you're almost going to be taking no damage. Or if you can even stack your damage resist with your overheal, which now I'm thinking about it would be a fantastic way to build an angel, and I can't believe I haven't done it yet. You would resist so much damage. Overheal and refuge, sorry. You would resist so much damage that it would really help, which is why I think, in all honesty, this other class that I also was downgrading was the Paladin. Because the Paladin gains damage resistance and not basic damage resistance. He just reduces damage based on his reflect. So it's not like, say you have 200 reflect, you're gaining 2% damage reduce or whatever. No, it's just reducing his damage. I don't know by how much. Based on what I've been able to see, it seems like it's based on his exact reflect number. So if you have 500 reflect, you're reducing 500 damage. That's what it seems like to me. I could be wrong. But based on what I've been able to tell when I'm using him, or her, I guess, it really doesn't, that's what it seems like to do. And seeing as usually with a Paladin I'm using Tempest and Ninjutsu, since he benefits from it so much, it makes it a lot easier to be able to utilize that reflect. And since it also stacks with other damage resistors, having other damage resistance on top of it makes him a pretty sustainable class. And if you have just even a little bit of vampire, you don't even need a lot, because his base shield gets auto heal, which also will benefit from no faith if you really do choose to go into no faith. It's going to just give you so much sustain that I think when I had that resolve, and I think I still had Angel Light, I was basically healing for, with a crit, I was healing for so much HP that I couldn't even see all the numbers. And because obviously you mainly are using Holy Smite or something like that with it, you heal for ridiculous amounts. And it has what, in my opinion, is the best pairing, which is Strength and Pi. But back to the Pirate. As we said, this one has a Strength and Dex. Not a bad typing. Again, it's not my favorite. I do really like Strength Index because it has my favorite ability, the Sword Dance, but that thing is so rare that it's hard to get unless you have the contract, which took forever to get because it's a hard one to get. So you'll probably be buying upwards of 200 contracts like I have to be able to get the damn thing. But other than that, I mean, it's not a bad combo, especially seeing as he gets a Void already at 20%. Let's see, is that actually on his equipment or is that on... No, that's on his shirt. So that's not as good, then never mind. But nonetheless, his base equipment. So if you're not one or you rolling a whole lot of legendaries or you like sticking with your basic guy's equipment, obviously, that's going to come in handy. But again, the main thing that, especially since he gets a void counter here, where it reduces cooldowns when he avoids, that would actually really help him out. But I mean, even though he has those kinds of aspects, neither one of those are hard to get as lab parts. They're actually pretty cheap lab parts. Yes, a good avoid stat is kind of difficult to get. It's easier than parry. I still haven't been able to get a good parry one. Like the best one I've been able to get is 15%, and it's like a blue star, and it pisses me off because I have so many avoid ones that I've just been completely dissecting them anytime I get them now because I just don't need them anymore. And I don't really use them that often to begin with. But either way, this isn't that bad of an ability. Then when you have Greed and Haggle on top of it, he has the potential to be a good farming class. Because with Haggle, it reduces the cost of your rerolls and then greeds, giving you a chance to gain more soul stones, which means when it's not an event like is currently going on for, I think, today's the last day on it, the increased soul stone count, it helps you out quite a bit. You'll gain quite a bit of soul stones, and you can combine this with other farming contracts and abilities, and you can probably make a massive haul. But I mean, when it comes down to Haggle, I've never really used it unless I'm using an ability like Promotion, where my abilities on my equipment can become permanent abilities and stuff like that. And I'm using high of those. I don't have a whole lot of soul stones. Like, say I was going to use it right now, I'd probably actually use it just so that instead of using 5 soul stones a reroll, it's only costing me 2. Or if you max it, it only costs 1, which is a pretty massive difference. Especially if you have something to replace those soul stones, like you do have Greed, or in my opinion, Greed on steroids, Golden Cat. Golden Cat, if you want soul stones, use that ability. You don't even have to get it upgraded. You could just have it at +0. You're going to gain so many more soul stones from it. It's not even funny because its base ability already doubles how much you get. So if you have that, getting it a +1 increases by another 50%. Then you increase it by another 50% to level 2. So if you have 3 of them, then yeah, you're going to be gaining triple the soul stones, which is the equivalent of the legendary ability Glory. But keep in mind that these stack. So if you can get the Glory bracelet, or if you already have Glory as a lab part, which I do not, and you have Golden Cat, and you have Greed, then at that point, all you need is something to give you boss bonus. You're going to be racking in so many soul stones that, you could just spend them all you want. You'll probably never run out. You'll be gaining so many off boss fights, so many, especially off chests in expert dungeons. During these increased soulstone events, I think I've been on average gaining about 80 soulstones each time I open it without Golden Cat or any of that. With Golden Cat, and especially when I got Glory as a legendary, I was gaining like 160 and stuff like that. Which means if you were stacking these things and you got an 80 box, you'd probably end up getting, without really doing the math in my head, because I'm lazy and I don't want to do it right now, you could probably end up gaining upwards of like 500 soul stones in the one box. Or you can even just use productive abilities, which is a passive ability on another ability. If you don't know that you can get those, well, you can. They're kind of RNG elemented, and like go into one of those change rooms, which is the thing that looks like a contract piece of paper. Or if you have, what's it called, trial and error, it increases your chance to find change skills, which can give either damage resistance, they can apply debuffs, they can hit people, they can do quite a bit. To me, they're some of the best things to get. Granted, keep in mind these buffs aren't huge. Like, say you get the one that adds damage increase, it's only normally adding, like, I think 10% damage increase or something like that. It's not adding a huge amount. Or if you gain the avoidance, it's only adding like 10% avoid. It's not adding a huge, drastic amount. And that's without buffing, obviously. You know, the helmet that increases buffs and that. Another reason why I think buffs are stronger than debuffs. Definitely increases how strong those are, so then instantly that ability becomes 20%. It gets kind of stupid when you have all those kinds of things in tow. But anyway, those are the new classes and kind of what my opinions are on them. I know this has been about a 30-minute video here, but I mean, I thought it was kind of important to talk about. I guess one thing actually before I do go that I will talk about is some of the new contracts that we got, such as this benefit of fire and black pupil. These are ones I got to drop from the dungeon. I don't know if you can just buy them in the store. I haven't really looked at the contracts. I don't normally look at them too much. But anyway, these abilities, I would say that a black pupil is a pretty decent one. And it's the main reason is because it comes with Blasphemous Curse. And Blasphemous Curse, if you don't know, is an ability that's normally on a pie staff. I can't remember what the name of it is. And it pretty much makes it where your ability levels randomize each floor unless they get maxed. If they get maxed, then they do not change at all. Which means every floor change, you have a chance to have your abilities go up to max. Now, of Understanding, which gives it a chance to be able to increase the level at additional time when it increases, if that actually stacks with this when it increases, I'm not sure. Never tested that out. I'd have to do that. But I do know that if, let's say, you have this and you can get the Void Ring, which increases levels by 3, which does in fact increase the levels by an additional 3. Save your level 1 ability, then you end up rolling it again. That's going to increase it by 3, so now you're going to have a +4 ability. And if Understanding stacks, it's going to increase it an extra time as well. But as I was saying, when it comes down to this thing can basically is the only way to have a chance really to max out the rarest abilities, such as things like Sword Dance, Resolve, I can't think of all of them off the top of my head. Things like Ascension as well, stuff like that, abilities that are pretty rare to find, especially if you don't have like gambling and alchemy and stuff like that to increase how many times you can re-roll and increase your luck to get more stuff. This thing will help you get your skills leveled up way faster, even though at times it may feel like it's kind of screwing you over because it'll increase it to 3 and back down to 0. You'll have it at level 7 and it'll bump it down to 0. Even though it does that sometimes, again, you will see more success with it than not. And do keep in mind that most of the time, when it comes to leveling up abilities, that's usually more of a bonus. But another reason why I do like it is because then if you get a changed ability, like let's say you get one that adds, I don't know, some damage resistance. Like you gain one that gives you 15% damage resistance whenever you use it. Well, now when you re-roll another one, let's say you were 1 level away from getting it to level 3. Normally, you would take that one if the level 3 ability was better than the damage resistance, which, let's face it, usually it would be. Like, for example, Angel Light. The level 3 ability, curing a status ailment, is much better than gaining the 15% damage resistance under 90% of circumstances. Unless, again, you have the one case where it's not, where you're using Dreadnought +1, in which case you have a cooldown of 5, so you're probably trying to max it so you can reduce its cooldown so that that doesn't hurt as much. But nonetheless, usually you are taking the upgrade, which means you are now losing your changed ability. So in turn, by having the Blasphemous Curse when you're re-rolling abilities, you're either re-rolling to try and max out an ability while it's being rolled, or level up an ability so that it's just stronger or whatever, or you're trying to roll a changed variant, which means every time Blasphemous Curse increases that one, you still have the changed variant on top of it. And then lastly, Benefit of Fire. This one I haven't fully used yet, just because its ability sounds like it would be so mediocre that I just haven't given it a chance. And the reason being is because it basically gives you Reflect based on your HP. And now back in the old days of the game, yes, this thing would have been completely effing broken. But nowadays, Mirror is so prevalent, whether you're in Karma or even in the majority of other dungeons. Plus, you have obviously that dojo room that just completely makes Reflect worthless, that I just do not see this contract being strong enough to hold a candle up to the other ones. The only thing that gives this thing even kind of a good benefit is the fact it has efficiency, which means that everything that costs barriers will only cost whatever it is. In that case, only one barrier, instead of it costing like 5 barriers and only costs 1. And then, self defense of every time you get an ailment, you get to smack somebody. That's not too bad either. And you have this one that I haven't really looked at. I did double check what it is. Let's see here. Oh yeah, deal damage over time to the enemy equivalent to the delayed damage you deal. That to me is not very good at all. I mean, its best thing it has here is the wavy attack, which it activates Pursuit whenever you use an ability that doesn't end the turn. So if you have, like, say, ninjutsu and stuff like that, you're just going to keep smacking them. Actually, I don't think ninjutsu triggers with Pursuit. I think it has to be non-turn ending and it can't have a ninjutsu. So in that, correction. Let's just say that we don't have ninjutsu for the fun of it because of that, and I know that works. And I've tried it with ninjutsu, and I do not think that worked, even when you would end your turn. So if we're going on the fact that you don't have ninjutsu in that, you can tend to hit people several times. I remember having this on a Moon Queen. I was smacking people like 15, 20 times in a turn, because it would smack them with that Pursuit, which would then trigger whatever the ability is, which would smack them again, and then again, and then again. And if they did manage to attack me, they were slamming into a Reflect and a shit ton of barrier, shield, and everything else, because I also had shield conversion, because I had the red pupil contract. It just kept stacking and stacking to the point where I had so much power that the only thing that managed to actually kill that thing was Petrify. There wasn't a single enemy in the game, even the big disasters, which are the gods of the game, even they couldn't really survive a single round going up against this Moon Queen, because she just did that much damage. And this wasn't even with Eternal Dark or any of them. I didn't have any of that. That wasn't even the game at this point, as far as I know. It wasn't actually. So we didn't even have that yet. So, I mean, wavy attack can end up breaking you quite a bit, because it can just be used to spring barriers, which when you're playing against an asshole that has like 20 barriers, every attack, even if it doesn't do much damage, you're just going to whack a barrier away, as long as it doesn't penetrate through it. But if it doesn't, or they have fairy wings, you're just going to smack a barrier. So wavy attack is probably the best thing about this contract. As for its other one, Black Rust, to me, delayed damage is already not very good. And the reason being, this is a turn-based game. And just like as those of you who know me from Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not a game where, you sit around for 20 minutes waiting for your abilities or whatever to go off. You don't do that, because that's how you lose. If you play a card and you ain't gaining advantage out of it pretty much instantaneously, it's really not helping you. Even effects that, are helpful, but yet the cards by themselves don't do anything to advance your game state, it's usually not a very good card. Usually those things have to be pretty broken effects, such as, for example, Supply Squad, to be able to be used in those manners, because when a monster dies, you get to draw a card, which increases your card economy and replaces the card you lost. And it can be used 3 times with all 3 copies, which means effectively you're even going plus off of it in economy. Whereas if we're thinking along the same lines, if I do damage, delayed damage, despite the power of the damage, if you have 3 turns to kill me before my damage goes off, I'm still dead if you kill me on the next turn. Or even worse is if they have something to cure it, which is another reason I think damage over time is pretty bad, because if for whatever reason they have a cure, say Angel Light, well, there you go, you just lost your damage, which means your ability is now useless, which is why abilities that were passives that rely on damage over time, passives that rely on status effects, any of those factors, against a lot of the really strong enemies, it isn't going to help you. Say you're fighting against a Phoenix, which is I think it's a monstrosity enemy. You use, let's say, Weaken against it. It's going to cure that instantly. It's either going to cure it in the turn after, or if you do manage to kill it, when it revives itself, because normally this asshole revives over and over, you usually have to have a stun to kill this thing. Either you have to have a stun to kill it, or you have to kill it right after it uses the ability. Like, it'll use its ability, it revives, so you know it's not active at the moment, or you have to time your actual kill move to where it hits right after, like, I think it's like 2 or 3 turns the revive lasts. You have to kill it right in that window. That is pretty much why that's the only time that delay damage to me is ever any use, is if you're really trying to delay a move to have it kill them at a precise moment, but yet you're wanting other abilities active so that you can slowly dwindle down their health. But again, even then, unless you're going through Reflect and you don't have Mirror, you're trying to use a really highly accurate move, which is the only thing I can hand damage over time moves, but can also be mitigated by other buffs, and those other buffs will actually still be stronger than damage over time, such as Tracking will always be stronger because it guarantees all abilities to be actual hits for 2 turns, and it gives you Tracking, which means they can't parry or avoid it. Way better than just adding damage over time that hits for 300% of your power. But when it comes down to it, even then, again, the Phoenix can always cure it, and then your damage, even if it was a turn like, oh, the damage can go off this turn, cured. Well, there goes your damage. And now it's going to get its revive back, and now the bastard's going to be back again. So, that is why I would say don't use damage over time, or any kind of debuff build, unless absolutely necessary. The only debuff worth using is one I'm going to go over here in a little bit in the next video. Thank you if you stuck through the whole 40-minute ramble here on about these new classes, as well as a couple other new contracts and stuff like that. Thank you for watching once again, and I will see you guys in the next video.